If you have weak, tight, or pained hips, or perhaps even back pain, this 5 to 10 minute routine is aimed to bring balance into the hip hinge mechanism in order to help you move better and feel well. We'll start by manually releasing tension in the outer hip and surrounding tissues. Next, we'll use simple kneeling exercises to create space and range of motion. Then we'll fire up the glutes and stabilize the pelvis, laying the foundation for a controlled, powerful movement. From there, we move into standing with exercises like the hip airplane and standing hip circles, training balance, coordination, and real-world hip control. We'll perform the 3D lunge matrix to explore strength and mobility in every direction the hip can move. Finally, we'll finish by loading the hips with a weighted goblet squat, solidifying everything we've built with strength and stability. This is more than just a hip mobility session, it's a full body recalibration, starting from the ground up. Let's get started. The first position we're going to use in order to prepare our hips is the 90-90 position. We're essentially creating an angle of 90 degrees at the ankle, knee, and hip, and we're keeping the torso upright, and we're simply allowing ourselves to fall forward from the hip, feeling a stretch on the back of the hip. You can also scan a little bit left and right, so you can turn your torso left and to the right, almost aligning your sternum with the knee, the shin, and the ankle. And you can also turn to the outside of the hip as you lean forward. Common mistakes are bending the spine and rocking forward like so. We're not after stretching the spine here, we're after stretching the hip, and so staying upright and leaning forward just from the hip joint is going to be effective at targeting the hip musculature. Some of you may benefit from a little bit of massage. You can use a tennis ball, a lacrosse ball, or some sort of roller, and if you need, you can sit down on top of it and roll around and see if there's any tension in the musculature that needs to be addressed. This will not be everybody's case. Some people will have flaccid or inactive hip musculature, in which case this may not be recommended, as you may be pushing on nerves or structures which are sensitive. But for those of you who have a lot of tightness and tension and stiffness, this may be a very helpful strategy just for a minute or two in order to bring a little bit of flexibility into the structure of your hip. The next sequence is a set of movements for the inside of the legs, the hips in general, where we're going to simply step forward with one leg and we're going to allow ourselves to drop forward and come back. We don't want the ribs to flare. We don't want to stretch the low back or hyperextend the low back, so we're going to keep the ribs and hips intact, and we're going to just drop forward by bending the knee over the toe as such. We're also going to repeat this at various angles, so we're going to go from forward to a 45-degree angle and progressively work our way out to the side like such. And finally, we can turn outwards and go back like so at about a 135-degree angle. Following this, we're going to use our hip hinge to transition into a quadruped, and we're going to extend the leg out to the side where we can stretch the inner thigh while sitting back into the hips and as if lifting the tail upwards with our sit position. Notice I'm not pulling the pelvis under, I'm not flexing my spine as I do this. That would take away from the effect that I'm having on the inner thigh. Rather, I'm lifting my tailbone and I'm sitting back in such a manner that my lower back stays neutral and I feel the inside of my thigh stretching. I can also allow my foot to drop off to the side as I repeat and as my leg opens up. This is a very gentle rock. I'm not pushing anything hard. I'm just simply allowing my tissues to release naturally with this very gentle movement. Since the hips and lower back are mechanically connected, often problems in one area may affect the other. For more thorough information on how to heal your back and how to balance your hips, join the Good Back Academy. The Good Back Academy is an online course including 7 tailored modules in order to prevent and treat back pain, but also set a foundation for healthy movement overall. The next exercise is a single-legged hip thrust. We're simply going to lay down on the back. We're going to create a 90-degree angle at our knees, and we're going to simply lift our pelvis in the air to create a half bridge position. Again, we want to make sure the ribs are not flaring, that we're not hyperextending our back, and therefore we're going to bring our ribs and hips together, create a distance which is set, and then we're going to lift one knee up in the air. Common mistakes can be the hip falling down or the hip shifting sideways. So what we're looking to do is create stability. One of the things that can help is driving the elbows down into the floor, creating a wide base, and then learning how to lift one leg into the air, and you should be feeling the bottom hip, in my case, the left hip here. We're then going to bring our tailbone down, and we're going to drive the kneecap up towards the ceiling, like such. We're going to bring the other leg up in the air, again, sitting down and driving up into the ceiling like so. Breathe in, breathe out, hold, engage the glute, feel the back of the leg and the hip working, and repeat. The next exercise is a hip airplane. This is a wonderful exercise to help with the stability of the hip, but also engage the rotational aspect of our hip. We're going to simply do a single-legged hip hinge motion where I'm going to leave the toe behind me, touching the floor, and I'm going to allow my weight to fall over one of my legs. I will then grip my ribs and pelvis to make sure that they don't rotate away from one another, and simply swivel on my back toe inwards to create internal hip rotation and swivel outwards to create external hip rotation. Common mistakes are not being far enough over the leg, being too far back, as well as allowing the knee to drop in as I externally rotate. We don't want this. We want the knee to connect the ankle and the hip. So we're looking for alignment here and mobility only in the hip. Another common mistake is turning the torso too much rather than focusing on the hip itself, which is why I lock down the core and I simply turn one way and I turn the other way. An advanced version would be to lift the back toe, rotate inwards, and rotate outwards as I stand on one leg. Once you have good stability of the trunk, you can open up your wings and you can fly as you turn left and as you turn right with perfect control. This will help with balance as well as hip stability and resilience. The next exercise is a Stork stand on one leg with a hip circle. All I'm going to do is I'm going to lift one leg into the air like such. I'm going to sit down into my base leg. So I'm going to create a spring-like feeling underneath me, and then I'm going to create circles with the free leg from the inside to the outside and from the outside to the inside. What's really important is that I don't get overzealous and I don't create a circle that's so large that my spine starts to move all over the place. I'm looking to create a stiff and stable pillar and create a circle which is appropriate for the shape of my hip. So more is not better. Precise and smooth motion is best. We're looking to stay upright, stay stable while moving the other hip. In case it's challenging to stay balanced, you may use the wall as such, simply placing one hand on the wall for a little bit of extra stability and then focusing on the movement of your hip much better. Sometimes it is helpful just to place one finger on the wall, and that extra input into your brain will help you stabilize a lot better. The next exercise is a 3D lunge matrix where we're going to simply take a short step forward, anchor the bottom knee, step back, anchor the lead knee, and then step out to the side, sitting back as if on a chair on one side, followed by an external rotation into a sumo position. Once again, stepping forward, stepping backward, stepping sideways, and finally stepping externally and coming back to neutral. Keep in mind, the lower back is neutral and still, and I'm moving exclusively through my hips in order to get a dynamic 3D motion into the hip hinge. This exercise can turn into a wonderful conditioning exercise whereby I do one set of repetitions on one side, followed by the other side. Alternating will give you a profound cardiovascular effect as well as strengthening the legs. Now that we've created a foundation for our hips to work well, we're going to put a little bit of load through them and finish off with a basic goblet squat. In my case, I'm going to be using a kettlebell. Of course, we can use anything from heavy books to dumbbell. All you're going to do is you're going to lift the implement onto your chest. You're going to make that part of your body. This will also remind you to keep the chest up and extended. And we're simply going to take a position which is comfortable for your hips. For some of you, it will be parallel feet. For some of you, it will be slightly turned out. You can experiment with the width of stance as well. And as you inhale through your nose, you're going to slowly sit down, making sure you don't pull your pelvis under, keeping the lower back neutral, and pressing the floor to come right back. We're going to make sure that the knees Push outwards. We're going to open up the hips as we sit into them, breathing in, loading the core, and exhaling as we push the floor away. Breathe in once more, sit down, hold the bottom position, not too deep lest we pull our pelvis under, but deep enough that we get a good activation of the hips and pressing out. For more tips on creating pain-free function and general health, subscribe to our channel.